Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today we're talking about a powerful midlife transition to happiness that includes kidney disease, commuting, stress, pets, and podcasting. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife mentor, and I'm so glad to be here with you again. Now, as you probably know, my mission is to help you stop living like time doesn't matter in midlife, because it does. We can't continue living in an autopilot fog. Life is just too short for these shenanigans, and being more intentional is really where it's at. It's not always that easy, though, to do a course correction, and that's what we're talking about today. A really interesting and powerful story of one midlife gal's transition and transformational journey from a lot of heavy-duty midlife stuff in her life to making big lifestyle and career decisions that all synced up with what always made her happy. You will totally be inspired by this interview. I know you will. But just quick, I want to make sure you know that I have a new little quiz. It's an awesome quiz, and it will help you find out what's keeping you stuck and how to move toward the life you've been putting off. It will help you understand what your future self is craving. It's free, it's fun, and it's fast. Head over to www.midlifequiz.com and help yourself get the insight you need to go after what you're excited about in your next chapter so you don't have regrets. Again, just go to www.midlifequiz.com. Okay, now let's dive in. My guest today is Dr. Julie Marty-Pearson. Julie is a storytelling strategist and podcasting mentor for purpose-driven women, empowering them to share their stories through podcasting. She hosts two podcasts, Podcast Your Story, which focuses on inspiring stories from women podcasters and guests about how they amplify their voices and grow their business through podcasting. And the second one is called The Story of My Pet, which highlights inspiring stories of pets while advocating for animal rescue, fostering, and adoption. Julie also created the Women's Podcaster Party networking community and the Podcast Your Story community membership to further support women and non-binary podcasters, guests, and speakers. As I mentioned, Julie's transition and transformation story is a really inspiring one. It's chock full of big decisions, lots of self-reflection, and some courage to boot. I know you're going to get so much out of hearing her story, so here we go. Hi, Julie. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. You know, one of my favorite things about being an entrepreneur is being out there in the world, meeting people, and sniffing out a good story. And I sniffed out a good story with you, and I'm so excited to have you on. So let's start by talking a little bit about what was going on for you in your 40s, leading up to some major changes that you ended up making.
Yeah, you know, they always say you find yourself in your 40s, but it's been a journey for me. So I would definitely say it started right after I turned 40. A couple weeks after I turned 40, I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. And I've had health issues, autoimmune issues most of my life. I had Epstein-Barr at 11, and that really kind of activated genetic autoimmune stuff I had from an early age.
Wow.
Most women don't have those issues so much until they have kids or they hit menopause. But I was very lucky to have it early on. And I was diagnosed at 25 with fibromyalgia and a genetic disorder called Sjogren's syndrome. And so I am accustomed to health issues, but the kidney stuff was new. And the doctors were kind of like, well, why is this happening? You know, so I had to go through a lot of testing. I had to have a kidney biopsy, all the things. And what we found out was a lot of it was from taking ibuprofen Advil products for decades.
Wow.
It had worn out my kidneys. So just a little side note, anyone listening, don't overuse it. I am an example of why. So that kind of started like, okay, my body was wearing out and I had to kind of start evaluating it. I went off work for 2 months almost to kind of go through all that and figure out what was going on. I had to change a lot of medications. So it was a lot of life changes. And then with it less than 6 months after that, my dad passed away. So it was a lot of change early in my 40s. I felt tested in a lot of ways. So it was a lot of heavy stuff, right? You know, when I was diagnosed with kidney disease, they didn't know how progressive it was, how quickly it was going to keep getting worse. And once you hit a certain point, there's no other option than dialysis. And I had friends who worked in dialysis as social workers, so I knew what that meant. And I did not want that at 40. I had a whole life to live still. And I think my dad passing kind of made that point come through even harder, because my dad was 94 and a half when he died. So he had a very long life and for the most part was very healthy. And I'm like, no, I don't want this to be my story. So that was definitely the start of the transition and change and figuring out what I wanted my life to look like, but also what was right for me.
Wow. And I know that you also had, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad and how that all played out for you with a personal health situation and then a tragedy in your family. That is a lot. And it can definitely lead into a wake-up call situation, which it sounds like that was happening. Now, how did it all work for you with academia? Because I know you were very invested in that area too.
Yeah, so at that point at 40, I had pretty much invested all of my career in education and higher education. And so I worked at various university and colleges throughout California. At different points in my career, I was adjunct teaching part-time at several places. I was full-time admin or staff. So it was a lot of commuting. It was a lot of juggling multiple things, whether it be teaching, working, finishing my doctorate, which I got 6 years before all of this happened. So I had been postdoc, a while and had gotten into more administrative roles, which is what I wanted, better pay, more consistent than being an adjunct. But they were stressful roles. I was involved in accreditation. And if anybody knows, accreditation means a school is legal, is legit. You have to have accreditation to be able to give degrees. So it's a very stressful part of university life to be the one writing the report, doing the research, interacting with accreditation people. Like, that's a lot of weight on you, no matter what the size is. So I know that played a big part in my stress and my health issues. But I was also commuting. So in higher ed, to move up, you have to move schools. Very few people go to one school and stay there their whole academic life. So I commuted from where I live in Central California to Southern California to Northern California, anywhere from an hour to 5 hours away.
Wow.
And at the point I got diagnosed with kidney disease, I was literally living out of a suitcase. I was renting a room from the librarian at the school I was working at during the week, and I would come home on the weekends. So I knew that was wearing me out physically and mentally. And then when my dad passed, it was like, we only have a finite time left. And, when someone passes, you question, did you spend enough time with them? Did you tell them you love them enough? All those things. So it was a lot of like big life kind of, what do I do now? I went back to that career for a little while. I had to have insurance. I had to have all the things. But then that school I had been at, having to take time off for health reasons. And then my dad passing, they were like, this isn't really working for us. And I'm like, I get it. It's not. So I left, took some time, went back to another job closer, and then my body just kind of kept going downhill from there. And so even though I knew I was making better choices, it still wasn't enough. So in 2019, I left my last full-time job in higher ed. I went on disability, and I ended up having a hysterectomy in the fall of 2019. So I was just kind of coming out of that, I like to say, recovery cloud. Because for me, with all of my issues, having a hysterectomy wasn't just an easy, let's get it done. I had to stay in the hospital overnight because of my kidneys. They had to test them the next day to make sure the anesthesia hadn't done anything bad. it's complicated for someone like me. Surgery isn't easy. And so I was literally coming out like, what do I do? Where do I go? Do I get another job? What does it look like? And then COVID hit. And then I was forced to be home 24/7, nowhere to go, nothing to do really. And as someone who was very busy her whole life, it was weird.
I can't even.
So, and of course, more life uncertainty. What is our life going to look like? Is our world completely changed? So it was a lot of 2 years of just heavy, big stuff. But as someone who was always doing the next thing, working, teaching, going to school, whatever it was, I finally had time to just kind of breathe and rest and kind of start to think about, what do I want my life to look like from now on? I mean, on top of my dad passing, now it was like, it's COVID. People are dying. You never know what could happen tomorrow. I need to do something that I enjoy and isn't stressing me out. So that's really when the big pivot started happening.
Right. And so what was that like for you to prioritize happiness, but feel very disconnected from your feelings and thoughts about what that meant for you?
Yeah, I think that happiness maybe was never a part of my career planning. I mean, I love higher education. I still love it. I am a student at heart. I love teaching. I love learning. So, it was hard to think. I just spent 20 years of my life getting more degrees, working, teaching, doing all the right things to get to the positions I wanted. Like my last job was like the one I thought I always wanted. Like I'd be there forever. Great benefits, like just all the stuff. But it wasn't my place. They weren't my people. I didn't feel connected there. And so like in the back of my head, it was all piling up. But as someone who is A+ student and always it's all about the successes and accomplishments, trying to think of what to do outside of all of that was really hard for me.
So what gave you the first insight you had? What was your baby step?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it was the world itself. I was engaging more with just, social media and connecting to myself again. Like I had space to like, oh, let's try to dye my hair pink. Oh, let's try this. Like I got art supplies, I had time to do all those things that I never had time to do because I was too busy or too tired. And in my doctoral program, so my doctorate is in organizational psychology. And so we had a whole course on coaching. Now that was more executive coaching, like corporations, executives, C-suite people. But ultimately, coaching is coaching, like the process. And during that, I originally was in a program for clinical psychology. I wanted to be a psychologist. And so that program, the coaching was like, yeah, that's still it. It's just different. And so I always knew I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to do that work in some way, but I didn't know how that fit into my other life. And so during COVID, I kind of started thinking about, well, what does that mean? And I had a friend who had been a coach. She was actually a coach for a corporation, and she had just left that to just do coaching in her own business. So I was seeing it modeling, and she was someone I could go to ask questions. So that was, I think, was really the point at which I started leaning into that idea and seeing what that would look like.
Right, that it was possible. Now, I am really fascinated by decisions and clarity about the first step, the next best step. So even the idea of you pulling out your craft supplies is not what everybody does, right? I mean, in my world, it's what I do, but it's not what everybody does. So specifically, do you remember some of the things that you gave yourself time to do again that you hadn't in ages?
Yeah, I think being creative was something that was always a part of me. When I was little, I loved drawing and coloring and all of that. My dad, when I was little, we owned a furniture store. So he was a furniture salesman. He was an interior decorator. Like, I loved fashion. I loved accessory. There are all these things that I loved doing, but were never a part of my career. Yeah. And so I got to kind of do that and try things. And, I think some of it was like, I always thought I had to be in different people in different places, if that makes sense. Yes. We have our work persona, we have our home persona, we have our friend persona. And so for me, it was like the work persona was literally gone. Didn't have a job, hadn't had a job for months. And I'd had points in my life where I'd had to do that for health reasons before, but this was different. Like I felt myself really allowing myself to remember, what do I enjoy doing? Like watching TV, watching movies. We couldn't go out and do anything, but I definitely was listening to a lot more music, watching a lot more, lots of documentaries and podcasts. I'd
Love
always
it.
been a person who driving listened to music because I could sing along and keep my energy up. But I had never really leaned into podcasting, although I had been listening to talk radio, which is similar. So,
Julie, same with me. Talk radio from high school. I loved it.
yeah, I love Sirius XM. One thing I love about it is it's a strong signal wherever you are. So me commuting and driving and traveling, I could always listen. And I'm a big Bravo fan. If you don't know what that means, it's a network on TV, lots of reality shows. And as a psychologist, I'm fascinated by reality shows and what people will do for money on TV.
Yes.
So I just kind of got to immerse myself in all these things that I would do a little here or there, but never really got to like fully lean into.
Now, I know we're going to be talking about podcasts more in a minute, but I just wanted to touch on just this, like what you gave yourself permission to do. And it's a very good idea to look back into your childhood and identify the things that gave you joy. So not when your parents got divorced, not when you had to move, not the trauma, not when you ended up in a big giant cast. What were the things that defined every year of your life or every chapter when you were younger, going into your age now, that gave you joy? There is a strong likelihood that what gave you joy then will give you joy again. It will bring joy, even if it's not the same exact thing. So one example I always give is mud pies. When I was 7, 8 years old, I loved making mud pies with my friend Judy in her backyard. And we loved it. And then I never really had that experience of creating something three-dimensional with my hands before until I eventually took a cake decorating class and I made those realistic flowers out of fondant. And oh my God, I was beside myself. It was like an art project that was edible. And I would have never done that before or imagined that that would be something I liked. And then there's just so many of those examples. And if you're listening right now and you're curious, I do have an amazing worksheet for that. It's called Passion Project 50. So just go to www.susierosenstein.com/Passion Project 50. And of course, I will put that link in the show notes. So Julie, you are just doing exactly what I love to encourage people to do. You're going to remember things. Oh, I like to play jacks. I had one woman say, oh, I forgot how much I liked horses. I mean, it's just things that you put away for a while because you can't imagine that being part of your life. But then when we are out of our 20s and 30s and 40s and we get into midlife, then it's like, wow, things changed. Maybe I do have time to take the art course. I couldn't believe I didn't take an art course till about 10, 15 years ago. I should have been taking art courses my whole life, but I wasn't.
Same.
I ruled it out. I ruled it out young. And it was for a crazy reason. I had this thought that I didn't do my PhD, but I did a master's, and I just very much associated with being an academic, also in psychology. And I just thought that smart people need to go into this lane, and exactly what you said, that you need different personas. And it wasn't until I started to read iTunes reviews in my 50s about this podcast, and people started to say consistent things. And if you're a listener, I hope you agree, because maybe you wrote one of these reviews. But the idea was that I like it when you laugh. I like it when you're silly. I like it when you really break down these things that are happening in midlife that are hard and scary and bring a little lightness to it. So I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I can let my freak flag fly a little bit here. And that freed me up. You don't need to write like an academic. You need to just be real, be authentic, be who you are. So thank you so much for saying that. And it's just so true. So you started to come out of your shell a little bit. You started to poke around and see what made you happy. And I guess your mind started to open up a little bit too, as to what
Yeah.
was actually possible for you. How did that next phase go?
It's funny. Last night I was playing with the new app I got. It's around astrology. And one of the things it told me was that I was a wise child, that I had always been, that person. But it told me just don't miss out on being a playful adult. And as you were talking, that popped up and I had to find what it said because yeah, I was always the good student doing what I'm supposed to, doing the things.
Yeah.
But I didn't allow a whole lot of time for other stuff. And so one thing I use in my speaking is as an opener is when I was 5, I wanted to be an accountant or a veterinarian. And those two parts of me exist today. The accountant I leaned into with psychology and statistics and research and all that. Veterinarian was more my private life. I've always been an animal advocate, love having pets, grew up with amazing dogs, have lots of cats and other animals now. And so coming out of COVID, one of the first things I did to make money was dog sitting. I had a friend who got a puppy while they were in lockdown, and so I started dog sitting. And so at one point I'm like, well, maybe it's this, maybe this is it. And then I realized, no, I don't want to live in other people's houses being told to pick up dog poop. Now
I looked at being a dog groomer when I was stuck for the similar reason. I remember thinking, what are all the things I'm interested in? And dog grooming came up because the animals, landscape architecture came up, floral design, selling solar panels. I'm like, oh, I love solar energy. I mean, I really thought about so many things just to get the ball rolling. So yeah, you love the pets, but you didn't want it to be full time. The dog sitting.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy doing it, but we all decide pretty quickly, like, is it worth my time? Is this really what I want to do forever? But it helped me financially kind of get through hard spots. And, but it also, when I decided I was going to start a podcast and took a course and it never really got any momentum, I never really went anywhere. I realized it's because I wasn't excited to talk about career coaching, which is what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I wasn't like, ooh, I get to get up and talk about resumes today. Like, no, that wasn't. So I decided to kind of put it aside and see if I even liked podcasting. And I thought, what is something I can talk about without any notes, for any reason? And of course, that's pets. I have plenty of stories. As an adult, I've started to realize how important my pets were growing up and through different points when I had health issues, whether I had a dog or a cat at the time, I got a lot of support from them and I needed that in my life. So I thought, well, let's do this and let's see if this is even something. And
but Julie, hang on a second. How did you make the decision to take a course in podcasting?
So I don't know about any business women out there, but when I first started my coaching business, so I decided to do career coaching because obviously I worked in higher ed. That was a topic I could easily talk about. I had worked in lots of different kinds of universities, so I knew different perspectives and degrees and all that. And so in starting that, I was taking a lot of courses around business, like how to start a business, how to run a business, all the things I didn't get in my education in terms of like the structure and the process and how you have to do things. And at the time, of course, post-COVID, podcasting was blowing up. And I saw many things about podcasting for business, all these things. And so I actually joined. It connected me to a community of women because it was mostly women taking her course about podcasting. It gave me the groundwork to try it and see if it was even something I wanted to do. And as an introvert, I mean, I'm more of an ambivert really, but as a true introvert, I gave my energy being alone, being quiet, like that. The idea of podcasting, I will say I've gone back in my head, like, at what point did I think like I could do this? Like, you couldn't have told me 5 years before that I was going to have a podcast. First of all, I probably didn't even really know what that meant, but yeah, there was just something in the momentum at the time and all the things I was doing that.
You know what I'm wondering about for you, because we have a lot in common. I'm wondering, like, I was always attracted to audio, radio, and you were too. But I'm also wondering, because of your experience in PhD, you were also very comfortable teaching. And there's an element to teaching to what
I I have learned through the last 4 years of podcasting that teaching is part of what it is. And I get to talk in a way that I used to love, because when I taught psychology, it was all about the application of what does this look like in real life, right? My poor husband was always my example during the sleep disorders section. But, so I was used to talking about it in that way, because psychology is something you have to use examples, you have to tell stories. So it was part that, but then I also realized that as someone who was trained early on in my education, how to facilitate, how to do focus groups, how to do interviews as a research process, the idea of getting on Zoom and interviewing something was never a question, because that was like innate in me. That's just who I was. One of my professors in college actually saw it in me and pulled it out and like helped nurture it, because he could see how I was watching everything. I was paying attention to everyone, and I could really, assess. And I was really great at giving feedback and paraphrasing and all those tools.
Oh my gosh, exactly. And this is when I first met you, when I realized that we had this in common. And my master's focused on qualitative research and long form interview. And when I got into coaching, I didn't have this epiphany until probably 5 years in, that it made perfect sense to everything I'd been doing since I was in my 20s. And so, so it's not just, I don't know why podcasting. This is why podcasting, because not only were you becoming aware of it, but it fit you like a glove.
Yeah, and I think that it allowed me, I think you said this earlier, to tap into a part of me I had never really tapped into in any way, like outside of my, home life. And I've had so many friends of mine who have said to me, like, wow, you're really being you. Like, you're showing up fully as yourself. You're being authentic. Like, I've had people say that to me, and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how I wasn't fully being myself before.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So when people, especially older gals like us, when we're looking for passion, what are we passionate about? Like, first of all, so many of us are so confused. We don't even know what we're passionate about, because we don't, like, passionate feels so heavy and big. Like, if we screw it up, we're never going to be passionate. We screw it up, we're never going to find happiness. We're going to keep searching. But passion, you have been passionate about this kind of stuff before in your life. You just haven't probably labeled it as such or appreciated it as such, or it's probably related to some of your natural gifts or what you're always attracted to. If you were on a desert island with one person and you were you had to entertain each other for decades stuck on this island. There was no Gilligan. It was just you and this friend. And what would you be talking about? Well, I have a feeling you'd be talking about the stuff that's related to your passion, because you can't help yourself. Right. You just can't help yourself. So, and it is so sad that so many of us are holding back and we're not stepping in that direction of being truly authentic. And I know it's like a bunch of coachy words to talk about authenticity and stuff, but it's really true. Like, who are you at your core when you're just comfortable, not worried about judgment? Just being comfortably you. What are you thinking about? What are you sharing? What are you laughing at? What are you writing about? What are you reading? How are you engaging? What conversations at a dinner party do you tune into? And what do you tune out of, right?
Right. And I think finding happiness, joy, whatever you call it, in what you do every day is not something we're ever taught to do. We're taught you pick a job you can do or you're good at, you get your education, you do the thing, and you keep going. Our society is all about successes and failures. So experimenting, finding yourself has always been like a woo-woo thing, but like, no. Like, if we're not happy, then we're not going to be the best wife, mother, sister, daughter, whatever, because we have to have some joy in what we do. Now, of course, most jobs, we're not joyful 24/7, but there has to be part of what you're doing that is feeding your soul. And even though I loved higher ed, I loved psychology, I still love all those things. I love teaching. I realized I could find other ways to do those things without it having to be in the box I had put myself in.
Exactly. And then there's this transferable skill idea too. So as you're talking, I'm remembering back to my research in grad school, which had to do with the relationship between children and their pet dogs. And now, it's not, did I think I was going to work in the field of pets in some way? I didn't know. I was curious. I looked into it, but I didn't really see it that way. I saw myself more applying those interviewing skills somehow, or focus groups at that time. And also in health promotion, there were a lot of related skills. And that's what I ended up doing. However, now in my current podcast, I have interviewed people who had something to do with pets, pet rescue, veterinarians, writing books about health-related consequences to living with animals, the empty nest pet, and all of that stuff. It comes in all the time. The way I talk about my dog, Nico the Noof, and my little chatty parrot, and the importance they play in my life. And even how I allowed myself to invite Nico the Noof into my family the year I turned 50, because 50 was a wake-up call where I really was like, what do I really want? And I really wanted to create the big dog experience for my family the way I had the experience in childhood with a family that bred St. Bernards and showed St. Bernards. So I have built it in all kinds of ways. And that's what's so amazing. And that's why podcasting is so unbelievably creative. It's so creative. So keep going. How did you land on, okay, I'm going to do a podcast and it's going to be about pets?
Yeah, so it went back to that, like, I'm not excited. It's not going anywhere. And so I thought, well, I can talk about pets any day of the week. And I'm that person that if I'm socializing, I'm talking about my cat or my dog, not my kids, because I don't have kids. But, even before I would have even thought of kids, that's always what I love to talk about. So my first episode was me getting on Zoom with my childhood friend. We grew up, we were born 2 months apart, lived 3 houses away our entire life. And so we just got on and laughed and talked and, her dogs interrupted us, her kids interrupted us. I didn't edit, but I started doing that and I put it out and I thought, well, let's just see what happens. So very, very slowly, people started listening, but it was the next step when people started reaching out and asking to be on my podcast. And I went, oh, maybe there's something here. And for me, I was always the one woman in the group that didn't have human kids, who was a pet lover, who, made other decisions in life. And so I always felt different, isolated in some ways. And I would say as a woman who doesn't have kids and never had them, and you see your friends all having kids and going through all the kid stages and all the things are about the kids, it changed a lot of my relationships. But I just thought that was how it was, So through the pet podcast, a lot of the people reaching out were women 30s, 40s and above, who didn't have kids, who loved their pets. And that love for their pets was reaching into them, volunteering, doing cat rescue, fostering, starting nonprofits. And so for me, podcasting allowed me to tap into a part of the world that, first of all, I didn't even know really existed, that there were so many more women like myself. But also that it was okay, that, yeah, we're valid as women, even if we don't have kids. And our mothering comes out in other ways, with our pets, with our friends. I am a proud auntie to many fur kids and human kids. I got to go to one's high school graduation a few weeks back, and it meant a lot to be a part of that process because I don't get to experience that with my own family. So,
oh my gosh, you're talking about belonging.
Yep.
Wow.
That's really what podcasting has done for me. And I've always felt different in different ways. I'm 5'11", and I've been 5'11" since I was 12. So I always literally stood out in a crowd.
Oh my gosh, Julie, I'm more than a foot shorter than you, and you're more than a foot taller than me. And when I met you in person, it's so funny to meet people in person after you've been talking to them on Zoom for a while. Because on Zoom, everybody's the same.
Yep. Well, and that's there's a power in us all being at the same level, literally, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I went to my first PodFest, which is a big conference for indie podcasters. And it was such a weird feeling to be in a hotel and be walking around being like, I know them. I know them. Wait, do I know them? And it's like all these people you only know online or on Zoom or in podcasts. And we were in person. We were getting to meet and hug and talk. But almost every person, as I met them, who already knew me, was like, "You're so tall." You're like, that was the thing, which in some ways kind of threw me back to teenagehood because I had a lot of. I was made fun of a lot for being tall.
Oh my gosh!
Especially by short boys.
Oh, Oh my gosh, that's incredible. But I
But
can see it. I mean, people, the same thing happens with me the other way. Wow, you don't look that short on Zoom. Well, what does that look like? I don't know.
it's so weird. But then I guess that's also the power in podcasting. Whether you do only audio or video, you get to express yourself in all these new ways without it being about really how you look or where you live or who you know or who your friends are. Like I have made some of the best friends in my life through my business and through my podcasting. And I've met so many amazing women. Like, come on, ladies, talk about yourself. Like, you should be proud of who you are. And I say that as someone who's had to learn to talk about myself and be proud of who I am. And so that's kind of where podcasting tapped into things that I didn't even know I was missing. And I was so glad I started with pets because, first of all, that was easy for me. I didn't really have to think about content or how to interview people about pets. That was very natural. But I also had always thought I was an animal advocate and then realized I only knew a very small part of the reality of animal rescue and what that means. So I slowly started having guests who worked in shelters, who run rescues, who volunteer. And I was learning through my interviews. And I started volunteering at my local shelter. I fostered kittens. I had bottle raised two of our cats before they were found solo alone. So I knew how to do it, but I'd never done it as like an actual foster. So I really was like, not just talking about it, I was doing it and I was experiencing it and I was learning. And that allowed me to realize that a lot of what I can do as a teacher, as a podcaster, is to educate people, is to share these stories that I was learning from. So it means other people need to know this too. Like, don't just say adopt, don't shop. Explain what that means and why. And so I always say podcasting changed my life, and it did. I ended up working part-time in our shelter. I helped do the off-site dog adoption events on the weekends, and I loved it. But the reality of working in, unfortunately, a kill shelter was tough. And after 9 months, my blood pressure went up and wouldn't go back down. And I had to go on another blood pressure med, which as someone with kidney disease, that's not good. And so it got to the point where my doctor said, I don't think this is the right place for you. Like, and it was one of those times where my body is telling me I have to listen. And it's hard because I want people to realize when you hear no kill, it's not because the people that work there want to euthanize pets. A kill shelter is usually because they are run by a government entity in some way, a city, a county, state, and they are only legally allowed to have a certain number of animals in their care at one time. So what happens when that limit is 200 and they get 220, get 250, the animals have to go somewhere. And when we're dealing with the overpopulation crisis we have now in the US, there is nowhere for these animals to go. There aren't enough homes. And so I was behind the curtain. I was seeing what happens when a dog comes in. Like I got taught, I learned how to give vaccines and put the chips in dogs or puppies or kittens before they're adopted. But I also got to see the public's lack of awareness and education and how rude they were to shelter staff. Like, do not take it out on the people that are doing this 24/7. Like, these people lived it. They fostered when they were at home. Like, these people would do anything to save these animals. So for me, it was like, it opened up like the understanding of I just need to help get these stories out there. I need to help educate people. I need people to understand what it means to be high kill, no kill, all those things, because the animals have to go somewhere. And if there aren't enough and they've been there 60 days or they're sick, like they're first on the list to be euthanized. And I think the point at which I knew I couldn't do it like that, I couldn't work in it every day, was when I was at an event and we had a litter of puppies and one of the puppies had thrown up. Well, that would happen sometimes when we're transporting them. You know, I get car sick, but at the event it kept throwing up. We're like, okay, so I had to take it back to the shelter and say, we need to have him checked. Well, the puppy ended up having parvo and they had to put him to sleep. And the person did the test and we were with the puppy and we're waiting for the test to show us what it was. She looked at it and she looked at me. She goes, they're going to make me do it. And I was like, oh my God. God, this puppy, this person, like it was literally heartbreaking and my body could not handle the stress of it. And my husband was like, just don't look at those emails when you're not there. I'm like, you can't turn it off. Like I'm spending time with these animals. I'm bonding with them. They're getting adopted, returned the next day, returned 2 days. They ate my blinds. My cat didn't like them. Like, guys, they're animals. Give them time. It was kind of overwhelming for me, but it was also a reality that I needed to experience so that when I talk about it, I can be like, no, you don't understand how it works. You don't understand what these people are doing every day to try to save these animals. And so I guess I got to tap into that part of me that thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, but part of me also knew I couldn't because I didn't want to deal with the sadness and the dogs that don't make it. So what it did was showed me that was not my place to help, but my podcast was. And so I keep the story of my pet alive because I know if one person listens to it and decides to adopt a dog instead of buy from a breeder, I have made a difference. And it may not, I'm sure it's probably more impact than that now after 3.5 years, but that's how I think about it. It's like, I look at my pets, I think of my childhood pets who were so important to me. We had a golden retriever that my dad adopted from the we used to call it the pound. Now it's the shelter. And she was the perfect dog. She was a golden retriever, fully trained. She was probably 2 or 3 when we got her. And she was just the most beautiful creature, the most sweet girl. She let me dress her up. She laid with, it was just like I have these connections to my pets that when I saw them in the shelter suffering, and I just said, people just don't understand what the pets are going through and why this is happening and why they should spay and neuter and just, this whole thing. So for me, podcasting opened me up to worlds I'd never realized I needed to be a part of or connected to, but it also gave me purpose. And so from there, I started realizing, gosh, I have stories to tell. All these amazing women have these amazing stories to tell. We need more women in podcasting. And so that's kind of been my evolution is now I realize I'm still doing the pet, but now I'm also like, hey, girls, I'm going to help you get out there because someone needs to hear what you have to say.
Bam. Mic drop. Yes, we do need more women in podcasting. I started in 2017 and I went to a podcast convention just before COVID. So it must have been 2018 or 19. And I just remember there were so few women there. Like it's changed so much since then.
Right.
No, I'm very happy to be here too. And you're doing very important work to help more women understand that this is a great option for some. And it may be the thing for you. So Julie, you've shared so much good information, a powerful, powerful story. You're very passionate and I really appreciate you coming on. How can people connect with you?
Very easy. You can connect with me on my website. It's simple, juliemartypearson.com. And there you can find both of my podcasts. You can also find my networking community, the Women's Podcaster Party, which is open to anyone. You don't have to be a podcaster or a guest. You can just come and learn and connect. And then you can also find my workshops and my membership because I'm trying to create different spaces where women can learn to be guests, to be podcasters, to grow their podcast, to monetize it. We're all trying to do that. And so that's really where my business has gone, is to focus on how I can help women in this space. And I always say that podcasting is not going away. It continues to grow, not at the rate it was, but it's growing all the time. So if you have a business or you have a passion project, you should be tapping into podcasting in some way.
Yes, ma'am. Julie, your story does matter. And midlife women have so much to share, so much wisdom, so many experiences. There are lots of options to express yourself, but all options do not fit for you. And so for me, podcasting was something I also never imagined in a million years I would be doing something so tech-based. It makes no sense to me when something weird happens. It had happened last week where the settings just change on their own when I go in to record a podcast, and then I feel stupid, and I have to really watch my thoughts because I don't want to just be frozen in fear that I'm going to do something and my computer's going to blow up. So I'm like, no, YouTube has the answer. Just Google it. So I Google it and I found some stuff and I fixed it. And it was great. I was able to fix it. Now, there was a problem 2 weeks ago I couldn't fix, but my husband fixed it. It turned out to be a cable connection. I wouldn't have found that on YouTube.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me that once. She goes, I had to change my cables. I had no idea cables wore out, like.
I was ready to ditch the mic. I'm like, it must be the mic. Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to like take program off and put it back in and install it. And then I'm going to get all confused. But anyway, It was the cable. But I was able to determine that there was a setting that had a mind of its own, and it changed, and I was able to fix it. And I felt very proud of myself. So don't let tech and fear of tech stop you if you have a sense that podcasting is for you. And the other thing I want to mention is, personally, I prefer audio only podcast. Some people like to include the visual, but you don't have to. So right now I'm recording this episode on Zoom with Julie, and I have the video going here, but I tend not to use them. It's very rare that I will use it. I'm just not as comfortable with it. It's another whole learning curve. And I kind of like going old school because I loved radio so much. And I love that you can drive and listen to a podcast. And I love that you can cut vegetables for dinner and listen to a podcast. I love that you can put your makeup on in the morning and listen to a podcast. Any of those things.
Well,
I just love
podcasting is very personal. Like I've had to think about it a few times. Like, someone is choosing to put their headphones on and listen to me, to listen to my voice, to listen to my story. And, that's why podcasting is so popular, because it is such a powerful medium.
Yes.
But yeah, video is king right now. And I do post my video versions too, but there are people who want the audio. There are people who want the video. So I can produce both, even though I know more about the audio than the video. But what I have learned over time in terms of editing either is it's about the content. And as long as people can hear you and hear what you're saying and talking about, that's what's most important. And yes, so many women don't start because of tech. And I'm here to say, I didn't know any of this. I'd never edited anything, let alone audio and video and adding music and just even the host and how to set it up. Like, that's what I help women with. I jump on Zoom with my clients and I go, okay, now click that. Now do this. Then we do that, right? That's what I can do as a teacher. But I always say, don't let it hold you back. When I started, I didn't edit. I just put out the raw Zoom footage. I did the intro and outro. I did the things, and it went out, and people listened, and people still listen. And so that's been a powerful thing for me to realize that I do have something important to say. Someone needs to hear it, but I can also help other people get out what they need to say, what they need to share.
I love it. I love it. So, Julie, thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, your links are going to be in the show notes if you want to get a hold of Julie and get some help and explore whether a podcast is a good idea for you. Please do. It's been super fun for me. And it's been super fun to meet other podcasters, especially podcasters that talk about pets. Love it. Thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for this episode. I just loved hearing Julie's story, and wow, do we have a lot in common, especially our common psychology training that included the nuts and bolts of interviewing and how we both ended up podcasting. It's just so good. Now, I can't stop thinking about a few things that she shared, especially that we're not really taught to create a life that makes sense to fuel happiness and contentment. That is such a big statement, isn't it? We're focused so much more on success. And then, especially when we're settling into our careers in our 20s and 30s, we just want to guarantee we got to make money. We got to get out there. We can't make mistakes. Like, it just felt so scary. Now, I know that you probably know somebody who is wrestling with this now. It might even be you, right? How to figure out how to be happier, how to be more content. And what I've noticed is that so many amazing midlife gals can tie it back to a conversation when they were younger that really influenced them and probably squished their beliefs about what might be possible. These limiting beliefs we carry around for decades can have so much influence on the decisions that we make and our ability to dream bigger and more creatively. For me, there's just no way, like in a million years, that I would have predicted that I would have a successful podcast in my 60s, that I would be doing a podcast, that I'd be dealing with tech like I do. Even when I was 50, it would have seemed crazy, like really out there. So remember, think about what you've always loved without the pressure of earning a living from it. Just take it into consideration and add it to what you know about yourself as you continue to explore the truth about what is really possible for you now, even at your beautiful age. Okay, thanks so much for listening to the Women in the Middle podcast. My focus as your regret-proofing midlife coach is to help you waste less valuable time and get on with the good stuff. Remember, being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be. My friend, it's time to stop waiting for the right moment and start creating the happiness, excitement, joy, and fulfillment that you crave. Reach out if you'd like to talk about coaching together. I've got several options that might be a good fit for you. Just head over to www.talktosusie.com. And don't forget to check out the new Midlife quiz. It's going to help you discover what's been keeping you stuck and learn what your future self really wants, what it's craving. So go to www.midlifequiz.com. And for show notes and links, head over to susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 432. You'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is all about the reality of running your business when you're a midlife gal. It's also on iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.